Okay, good morning. It's 9:30. We'll call this meeting to order. Welcome to the council meeting for Wednesday, March the 27th. Land acknowledgement. We are gathering on the lands that have been home to First Nations people from time immemorial. We acknowledge that what we now call Richmond Hill is on the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the Mississaugas and Chippewa Nations of the Williams Treaty. We also recognize that we are on part of the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee and the Huron-Wendat. We would also like to acknowledge all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people from across Turtle Island who now reside in the city of Richmond Hill. We are committed to rebuilding constructive, cooperative relationships. So at this time, I would ask if you can, please stand for our national anthem. Okay, thank you very much. So we have a public forum next. We have one person that's registered, John Lee. And so, Mr. Lee, if you want to come forward, you've got 5 minutes to address council.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here today to address specific issues that have long bothered our community, staff, and the council. How to improve transparency in our municipal operations. Transparency and democracy governing cover broad topics, and today I want to focus on two specific aspects: the 5 minutes time limit for council delegations and availability of municipal operation documents. Over the past 7 years, I have dedicated more than 3,000 hours to engage with our community in fighting against overdevelopment and pushing for better municipal governance. One significant hurdle we have faced is the lack of transparency in municipal operations. Let's consider one example. Each year, the city releases its budget for public review and council approval. In Richmond Hill, we can access records go back 5 to 6 years. Comparing data over such a period can make it a challenge to identify issues. But if we extend this to 10 or 20 years, trends become much more clear. We have had debates comparing Richmond Hill with other municipalities concerning operational efficiency. Last year, I conducted a comprehensive research of the city over a decade, revealing a clear trend of declined operational efficiency. Today, I'm not here to debate, but to present some factors. In contrast, Marham's financial data come back to the past 21 years. We have 5, 6, they have 21 years. Markham has had the lowest property tax increase compared to similar municipalities over the past 2 decades. In almost all areas, such as financial and planning, the city of Markham provides its residents with far more information than we receive. The transparency of information available to public is not a challenge issue. It is simply a matter of whether the city chooses to operate transparently. Here, I strongly urge some councillors in Richmond Hill to propose a bylaw that mandate public information be accessed for a minimum of 10 years. Municipal issues are often complex and require ample time to be addressed thoroughly. However, during council meetings, we frequently found ourselves constrained to a merely 5 minutes window to voice our concerns, a time frame that is clearly inadequate. The issue of council delegation time constraints has been a long-standing problem in our committee. Without an effective solution, today I propose a token system for the council staff to consult for its implementation feasibilities. In this system, each councillor receives 2 tokens. Each token represents 1 minute extension speaking time for a delegate. Should a delegate request this extension and the councillor agrees to allocate 1 of their tokens, the delegate will get 5 base time plus 1 more minute. Importantly, a councillor can only assign 1 token to a single delegate, resulting in a maximum 14 minutes speaking time. If all councillors agree, 5 base time plus 9 additional minutes. The total actual time per meeting provided by the token system up to 8 minutes. So this is manageable. And I believe it can resolve most of the issues related to council delegation time constraints. Grant the citizens more than 5 times to speak is not an unachievable hurdle. It's a step towards fostering a stronger relationship between the council and the community, enhancing municipal record availability, and introducing a token system to extend the speaking time in council meetings represent small but significant steps towards transparency and democracy governing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so the next item is council announcements. Is there anybody with council announcements? Councillor Tree?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Last week on Saturday, we host a senior house forum in Academic Community Center. Thank you for our Mayor David Weiss, also Deputy Mayor Government Chan support. So we invited 70 speakers from Dale Manor, from hospice, regarding to 4 topics for long-term care, disabilities, also mental health, also hospice, and also cemetery from Archimedes Cemetery Center as well. So thank you so much for all the people who joined this one, and thank you for all the support from our different units regarding to the senior house, and also thank you for the council member support. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else for council announcements? Okay, seeing none. The next item is introduction of emergency or time-sensitive matters. Anybody have any emergencies or time-sensitive matters? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, we'll move to adoption of the agenda. I need a motion to adopt the agenda. Regional Local Councillor DiPaolo, seconded by Councillor Davidson. All those in favor? Okay, that carries unanimously. So disclosures of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof. So I, as announced at the committee of the whole meeting, have a pecuniary interest in, Mr. Clerk, I forgot to look up the number of that on this agenda. Sorry. It's the item that deals with 124 Center Street West. the heritage designation of that property as my brother and sister-in-law own that property. Okay, what he said. All right, anybody else with a disclosure of pecuniary interest? Okay, thank you. The adoption of previous council minutes, we have two, one held on February 27th and one held on February 28th. One is council public and one is council meeting. Councillor Silovitz, Regional Local Councillor Chan, all those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Okay, moving on to items identifying separate discussion. We have 15.1 is being held, 15.3.3.4 is being held because of a delegation, and 15.3.6 is also because of a delegation being held. Correct. Okay. All right, anybody else? Councillor Shu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to pull out 15.3.10, which is a TSOS,
Okay,
to discuss separately. That's all. Thank you.
okay. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none. So that means that we can adopt 15.2, 15.3, 3.1, 2, 3, 3.3.1, 3.3.2, 3.3, 3.3.5, 3.3.6, 3.3.7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I held 9. Yes, I did. You were right. I circled it on the bylaws. I was just checking to see if you were paying attention, and you are. That's good. 15.3.4, 15.3.5, 15.3 and 15.3.7, 15.3.8, 15.3.11, 15.3.12, 15.3.13, 15.3.14, 15.4, and 15.5, as well as the correspondence 15.6, and we'll hold the bylaws, Mr. Clerk. All right. Okay, so I need somebody to move the rest. Councillor Silovitz, Councillor Tree, all those in favor? Opposed, that carries unanimously. Okay, no public hearings today. I don't think we have any presentations. So we have a number of delegations today. We have 10. So we're going to be here for a little while listening to delegations. So I would ask all delegates two things, please. First of all, we're going to be sticking as closely as possible to the 5-minute time limit. When you hear the first bell, it means that you've got 1 minute to go. And when you hear the second bell, the time is up. So I'd ask that out of the interest of time and those that are going to be presenting after you, that we try to stick to that. And the other thing is too, that you're here to speak about an item that's on the agenda and typically a staff report that's in front of us. So I'd ask you to try to focus your comments on that subject. So the first delegate that we have is Liz Bick from 39 Center Street regarding the notice of intention to designate 39 and 37 Center Street West. So Liz, I see you are joining us virtually and you're unmuted, so go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, I just wanted to speak about my property, 3739 Center Street West. I did not own a historical property before moving to 39 in 1980, as did a previous delegate. However, I did purchase an additional property, 37, in 1987 to preserve the building as a whole. It seems that owning a previous historic property carried some weight in the designation decision made by the committee of a whole. My husband and I moved to number 39 in 1980 to begin our married life. However, none of the council or Heritage Richmond Hill know anything about me or my history. Much of my childhood was spent at number 39 with my grandmother, every summer, every weekend, and every holiday. I remember when Center Street stopped at Bridgeford. Innes Crescent and Mackenzie Health was a field. I took piano lessons on Center Street. I'm the 5th generation of my family to belong to Richmond Hill Presbyterian Church. I went to Sunday school, then later taught Sunday school. I sang in the choir and was a substitute organist whenever the organist was on holidays. I went to the movie theater where the Renaissance now sits. I took skating lessons in the mid-50s at what is now Elgin Barrow Arena. When I was older, my friends and I would skate on the arena's Saturday night pleasure skates. I skated on the mill pond and attended every winter carnival. I can vividly remember the 5 houses that were demolished, one of which was Miss McConaughey's, to make way for the apartment building that now faces my house. And now the 2 remaining houses and barn are to be demolished to erect a condo building. The High Z Farm property became the home of Costco/Home Depot at Elgin Mills and Leslie/404 area. At the strong urging of Janet Fail, Heritage Advisor for the town, who was anxious to preserve the buildings on the property, my husband single-handedly dismantled, marked, and loaded each and every board of one of the smaller outbuildings onto our large flatbed boat trailer. He carefully reassembled the building at the rear of our property. That was almost 30 years ago. Further restoration was done recently to maintain the integrity of that building. It sports 2 6-pane windows from an older house on Center Street, flanked by a pair of shutters from the original Shouldice Surgery building in Thornhill. In 2006, we underwent an addition to both our house and garage. The French doors on this addition are from the 32-room Boyd Mansion in Bobcaygeon, Ontario. I rescued them during demolition. I approached Harry Schell in Stouffville, and he replicated these doors and made my back entrance door. The man door on our garage is one I rescued from a heritage home on Center Street. When I was walking one day, I saw it lying on the boulevard, awaiting garbage pickup. Over the years, we have collected many pieces of architectural value. They all have a story. I have found a use for most of my collection. I was very lucky to have married a man that shared my excitement for heritage and had the talent to achieve my visions. The heritage houses in our area have seen multiple owners in my lifetime. And to my dismay, there are heritage houses lying vacant, seemingly waiting to meet their demise. For these properties, I understand and support the importance of designation. We need to preserve their historic architecture. However, my house has not changed family since 1912. Having spent a great deal of my childhood here and grown up in this home, my daughter and family who live in number 37 are as dedicated to the preservation of their home as I am. We are proud of our property and its history. I do not want my home designated. There is no incentive for me to designate. Routine repair becomes more onerous. I go to great lengths to preserve the integrity of my property and am forced to designate against my wishes. Please honor my request in your votes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bick. The next delegate is Howard Doty from 10 Cheval Court, regarding the report from Suzanne Craig, Integrity Commissioner. Mr. Doty, there you are. Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, councilors, attendants, others. It has been a constant complaint and worry of people in Richmond Hill and throughout the country that local decision-making has not so much excluded, but has lost the interest of residents. Apathy among the citizenry, especially in things like low turnouts for voting, have put a bit of a pall on the way in which municipal governance is conducted. Local democracy is the cradle of democracy. And I would like to see that this time in this place, that this recommendation for the dismissal of John Lee be regarded as a symptom of SIDS. In the 40 years I've spent in Richmond Hill, I've seen hundreds of community organizers, residents who are interested in politics. John Lee is easily one of the top 10 as far as exemplification of public service. His professional competence is well certified. He is persistent to the point of self-exhaustion. He's passionate. No one will deny that. He has unmatched integrity, courage beyond question, and honesty, perhaps almost to a fault. He does not suffer fools gladly. By these lights, he is a gift to the city, a light now that you are being asked to snuff out. The action recommended by the Integrity Commissioner's report, I believe, is one-sided. It could equally be argued that the complaints registered against John Lee are frivolous, insufficiently supported by facts, vexatious, and abuse to process, malicious in that the complaints registered against him intend to do harm, and mendacious in that they likewise are distortions of the facts. But more important, if John Lee is removed from the Committee of Adjustment, you will have the appearance of suppression of dissent. Justice must be seen to be done as well as being done. And by removing the only member of the COA without ties to developers, will give the impression that development interests will not brook even token dissent. Even in my own organization, the Beaufort Hills Homeowners Association, the majority of executive members expressed to me within the past week frustration and loss of confidence in the process, not of the COA, but of the whole planning process. They're giving up. This alienation of attention is something that this council was elected and installed with a mandate to stop, to redeem local politics, to make it open. I'm acutely aware that statutory and other considerations limit the capacity of council to act in many areas where they would prefer to act. But if John Lee is removed, that will be a blow to optimism and hope among the residents. On May 15th, 2015, author, lawyer, and teacher Wendy Kaminer testified before the U.S. House Judicial Committee on the Constitution and Civil Justice on the matter of harassment, which is the key to the Integrity Commissioner's report. She said that students in her day, less than a decade ago, often talked about harassment, and she asked them, what is harassment? And they replied, it's making someone feel uncomfortable. Well, then, she replied, that makes me a harasser because I strive to make at least a few people uncomfortable every day. John Lee may make people feel uncomfortable. Maybe they have things to be uncomfortable about. Last little note, about 50 years ago, my old mentor, Gregory Bateson, was in conversation with students and a couple of colleagues when his little 6-year-old daughter came in and said, Daddy, why do Frenchmen always wave their hands when they talk? He took that as a moment of
Okay, Mr. Doherty,
opportunity.
you're over time. If you can wrap it up.
I will wrap it up. He turned that into an article called Why Do Frenchmen? It was a meditation on cultural differences and the way they can affect people's perceptions. I will ask you to keep that in mind.
Thank you. Okay, the next delegate is Elena Smith from 10 Cheval Court regarding the same item.
Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Smith, could you just pull that down a bit?
Yeah,
There you go.
short, sorry.
No, it's compact and fuel efficient, not short.
Good. I came today to share my experiences and interaction with Mr. John Lee. I've read the Integrity Commissioner's report, found problems with it. Personally, I contacted Mr. Lee by email with phone follow-up on a property matter to gain information for myself. I found Mr. Lee most knowledgeable and helpful, giving freely of his time and energy to explain material to me. In reading the Integrity Commissioner's report, this person was not described. The point that Mr. Lee was persistent was presented in a negative light. It seems to be at the base of what caused much communication difficulty with his fellow members of COA. It must be remembered that persistence in the presence of negative feelings from others is not a fault, but in fact, a natural human reaction. The other COA members are not blameless here. Also, council shares any blame in that regard. As the Integrity Commissioner's report pointed out, and I quote, "It is recommended that council develop a procedure and rules policy for the COA. The investigation identified areas where detailed policies and procedures would establish better understanding, e.g., example, format of minutes as official records and rules for engaging in COA activities outside of hearings and other official functions of the COA. With this procedure in place, a lot of the back and forth causing insistence to end up being labeled aggression would have been eliminated. Therefore, I advocate at the most for a reprimand, only as the appropriate course, certainly not dismissal. And with dismissal comes the loss of an excellent, fulsome, and scholarly contributions that Mr. Lee makes to the COA and to council and to thereby us taxpayers. Going along to get along is obviously what the majority of COA would desire. But the lone voice pointing out problems isn't going to win a popularity contest, but instead alerts us to needs that require more attention. We must remember that the true nature of democracy is how it treats its minorities. The minority voice matters and should be heard. As a taxpayer, I would not want to lose the educated expertise and contributions of Mr. Lee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next delegate is Joanne Langshaw from 42 Roseview regarding the same item. Welcome, Ms. Langshaw.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you for the time to speak today. I feel like I'm very loud. I do have concerns with the operation and the oversight of the COA. And those concerns do not include the behavior or conduct of Member Lee. I've been involved with the application for 34 Roseview now since 2020. And there's been considerable objection to that application with strong residents' attendance and presentation of objections. I attended and presented at both the September 2023 and January 2024 C of A hearings. I want to give you some visibility into what happens at some of those meetings, because unlike this meeting where you are live streaming and recorded, that does not happen at the Committee of Adjustment. I also have concerns with the way the minutes actually reflect what has taken place at some of those meetings. Let me describe some of what took place at the September 2023 C of A hearing for 34 Roseview. There were two members of the committee who did not support the application as presented, Member Lee and Member Gossi. Member Lee shared his concerns via a presentation that was factual and impactful and supported the views presented by many of the residents. Member Gossi also shared he was struggling to support this application. The acting chair used his position and authority to direct the outcome of this hearing.
Okay,
When it
Ms.
was-
Langshaw, sorry, I just need to remind you, this item before us is not about the Committee of Adjustment. It's
I'm
about
aware of
the
that.
IC report in front of us. So I'd
Right.
just like you to focus your comments on that if you can.
My purpose behind this information is to bring to light conduct that
Okay.
routinely happens in these meetings, that as the people who have appointed those members, you're not getting the visibility on. So you have visibility that came from 2 complaints without seeing the rest of what's happened in some of those meetings. So you can
Okay, we'll
decide to.
continue. I'm
Okay.
just pointing out that we're dealing with the IC.
I understand. When the acting chair asked Member Gossi what he needed to be more comfortable with in this application, and as per the minutes, Member Gossi said, "I'm having a hard time seeing these variances as minor." The acting chair had the opportunity to call for a motion, which he did not. Another concern, which was not noted in the minutes, and again, this speaks to process, and how the minutes are not fully presenting what happens in those meetings. On the projectors that you see here, there was a chat note that popped up on the screen that said, "What happens if it's a tie?" This is unprofessional. I don't know who the chat was between, but obviously we know what happens in the event of a tie. However, the acting chair used his authority to control the process, and did not call for a motion. In the January meeting, again, if we're talking behavior, Mr. Lee presents factual information, which is of an opinion that is different from other members of the committee. The acting chair was clearly showing frustration when, with the number of objections from residents, and he asked only for new information. And then he interrupted, he spoke loudly, he was rude to residents who continued to want to hear their voices heard. I have not seen that kind of behavior from Mr. Lee. When the acting chair called for a motion, it was Member Gossi who motioned to approve, which I find shocking because in the previous meeting, as noted in the minutes, his position was the variances are not small. The variances had not changed. I don't understand that conduct either. You're all here today because you were elected by your constituents to represent their views and make reasonable and appropriate decisions for the city. You in turn appoint members to the Committee of Adjustment and delegate that same authority to them. It's important that you have visibility on how this is working. I attended in person September 28th and January 18th, and I did not observe behavior from Member Lee that I felt was inappropriate in nature. He understood the views of residents and had a viewpoint that supported many of the concerns raised by residents. I also appreciate the efforts of Mr. Lee to try to drive transparency and balance within the Committee of Adjustment. I understand today's meeting is being recorded and live streamed for greater transparency and to allow you to have visibility on those people that you are entrusting with the delegation that you have given to them. I would encourage, at a minimum, the Committee of Adjustments also should be recorded and live streamed. Thank you for your time today.
Okay, thank you very much. Next delegate is Wilhelm Blake from 136 Center Street about the same item.
I got caught with my windbreaker there, which is a sign that what I feel like, yes, as an engaged citizen of my new hometown in Canada. I'm talking to you with a threefold personality. First of all, as a professor of political science, I won't lecture you. My family is complaining enough already. Second, I talk to you as what I mentioned before, an engaged citizen. I don't understand myself as a delegation. My wife told me, don't waste your time. She is more of the cynic population of this. I still, for reasons in my personality, like feel an urge to talk to you. Third, I talk about as a personal friend of John Lee. John Lai. John, I know I struggle with your family name, but anyway, you know it's meant you. John has, and don't be shocked, I told you in person, a challenging personality. He is opinionated and righteous. Out of this, he can be perceived as sometimes aggressive. He is, thank you for your patience listening to him and me and all the others, he can be a nuisance. I sometimes feel like he is a terrier. He sniffs problems in our city and he barks. I don't think you are a German shepherd. Let's talk about this. Let's not get lost in metaphors. I share with John Lee my deep frustration about the process of the Committee of Adjustment. And I'm looking at you, Mr. Thompson, because the first one you shared with me 10 years ago, and I won't go into the details, you were the dissenting voice, but I started to wonder about this process 5 years ago, and I'm looking at you, my neighbor to the west. I had another involvement where after a long meeting of 3 hours, it seemed to me that the Committee of Adjustment was just tired and rushed it through a decision which can be seen on Center Street West number 60, topping with extending the approved floor place by more than 100%. Let's not get into the planner's report. Anyway, out of this, as I told you, a lot of people go into cynicism. It's not cynicism about this council. Certainly it's cynicism about the last council, where I, with others, was attacked by a member who is not sitting here anymore due to the efforts of John Lee. You don't owe him anything, who was waving his video and took a picture of us, never asking my permission in an aggressive way. And none of the council dared to call him to order. I don't have the money and the time to call a rowdy to order, and I'm happy if he listens to this. Coming to my last point, we live in a representative democracy, which is first of all done in elections. We as citizens, and I understand myself not just as a taxpayer and not just a resident, I understand myself as a citizen, and you are citizen too. We vote you, we trust you to speak for us in this period. But there's another side. You not only have patiently, which you do, listen to us, you have to consider what we talk about, because otherwise we slide into cynicism, which is a problem in this town. We should be grateful, and I sum it up. Let John Lai honorably design from the Committee of Adjustment, where he is a lone dissenter. It must frustrate him, and it frustrates the other members.
Okay.
But I'm sorry, Mr. West, I'd like to one more thing talk to you and the council.
Okay. Wilhelm.
Take this thing as a stimulus to think about, to diminish, to help with the trust, with the mistrust we have in town. Thank you for
Thank you.
your attention.
Okay, next, Brian Chapnick from 110 Arnold, same issue.
Mr. Mayor and councilors, Richmond Hill. My name is Brian Chapnick, 110 Arnold. And I've reviewed the Integrity Commissioner's report about John Lee, and I consider it to be a sham and an insult to the very notion of integrity. So according to Wikipedia, integrity is defined as follows. Integrity is the quality of being honest and showing a consistent and uncompromising adherence to strong moral and ethical principles and values. In ethics, integrity is regarded as the honesty and truthfulness or earnestness of one's actions. Integrity can stand in opposition to hypocrisy. John Lee exemplifies this kind of integrity that we need in our community. As a member of the Committee of Adjustment, or COA, he has worked tirelessly to identify defects in our current system that allow for unfair and biased decisions, supporting each and every application for a zoning variance, despite what are sometimes clear breaches of the official plan and notwithstanding rational and unified opposition from the surrounding neighbors. Recently, John has authored a comprehensive report based upon his own observations, as well as research into the best practices of other municipalities close to Richmond Hill, demonstrating the shortcomings of our COA, outlining the reasons behind the problems and possible ways that they can be resolved. Unfortunately, there are some individuals connected to the COA who lack John's integrity and are more interested in protecting the status quo than in making any changes to protect against the destructive infilling projects that benefit only the developers and harm the neighbors and surrounding community. You may hear about some of these travesties from others that are here today, and in fact, some of you already know about these cases and have promised to look into these issues further, but years go by and nothing changes. In fact, the problems worsen as less and less relevant information is shared with the neighbors and variance hearings are taken offline to prevent public participation. And then the staff or COA members who are tired of John being the lone voice of dissent on these biased applications decide to lodge a complaint with the Integrity Commissioner, an obvious attempt to silence him from championing the changes that are so warranted and needed. Of course, the specifics of the complaints cannot possibly explain these dynamics, so they focus on minor breaches of decorum wherein John is accused of causing someone emotional distress or of not sharing his detailed notes on a case with other members of the committee because he's certain that those notes are being leaked to the applicant, or of quote unquote harassing people with emails because they refuse to respond to his concerns with any solid arguments or appropriately reasoned justifications. These are the petty complaints that are lodged against John with the Integrity Commissioner, which in her wisdom she has decided are so egregious that John should be removed from the committee, despite John having tried to explain to her the context of these accusations. Is this witch hunt focusing on John's conduct really about integrity when monster homes allowed by the C of A are ruining neighborhoods, destroying character and value, forcing people to move away? Isn't integrity about fighting for values and principles that matter? And in doing so, isn't it typical that some people with delicate sensibilities might be offended by the insistence and perseverance required to achieve the necessary results? There are many times when John has been ready to throw in the towel to stop fighting for the betterment of our community, when all he receives is criticism for the hard work he has put in towards positive reform. He's talked about quitting his position on the committee many times, and has in fact been encouraged by myself and others to do so. But you see, John has integrity in spades, and he refuses to quit when he knows that in principle he's right and what he's fighting for is important. I hope that you can see that and will vote against the recommendation put forward by the Integrity Commissioner to remove John from the committee. Your own integrity demands it. I thank you for the opportunity to speak here today.
Thank you. Mr. Alex Wong is the next delegate. Is he joining us virtually, Mr. Clerk? Oh, is Mr. Wong here? Okay, I don't see him. Mr. Lee, you're next.
Good morning, everyone. Because only 5 minutes limit, I can only highlight some key points regarding IC report. The heaviest accusation against me in the report is that I exposed COA operational details to the council and advocated for transparency, equity, and accountability. See this table, you will see what I'm fighting for. The current COA practice limits all means for public oversight of its operation, such as remove application drawings from the public access. Just this one means majority will not be able to evaluate the application. Coupled with deliberate edit minutes, the minutes is edited, deliberate edit, not providing special reason for decisions, limited and incomplete history records, and the absence of any video and audio records for the public to verify the actual hearing procedure. If those audio or video exist, the report only exists because everybody can see it. One case, the 34 Rossville application, the IC report see I bullied the staff to tears, but unfortunately there are dozens of residents from 34 Rossville present that meeting. The IC commissioner didn't interview any of them. So I think John An was there as well. So that's the factors. These optical measures have completely disabled public ability to challenge any decision. The opacity has reached such a degree that as a COA member, I cannot access the notice of decision. The decision we made, I don't know what's the road and send it to the applicant. I cannot access. That's the transparency right now. That's what I'm fighting for right now. My effort to engage the council in COA reform have been deemed several code of conduct violations, including damaged reputation and the profession of staff and action concerned workplace harassment. However, please keep in mind, first, my effort to resolve issues internally was repeatedly overlooked. Give example, I asked the COA to load the previous records for exam. That email I even copied to council members, but was rejected. As a COA member, I can only access very, very limited records. I can give you, see what our approval rate and what I can access. That number from other municipalities, I can access thousands of records, but as COA member, I can only access less than 100. Second, if we had adopt a transparent operation model like those other municipalities, I don't need to fight. I don't even need to join the COA. And also the IC report only exists because I'm fighting for those already exist there. In previous term, residents like Gary and also like Pat Pollock complained about the COA operational inefficiency and those issues. And also several councillors know well of this. As a return, this term, the COA canceled the online meeting. So no audio, you used to have a video records. That's why you can verify what exactly happened. This term, as improvement, the planning department canceled the video as a record. That's why those IC reports can see whatever they want because no witness, no evidence. That's what I'm fighting for. I'm fighting for basic transparency. Over the past 7 years, I have deeply involved municipal affairs, from organizing residents to oppose of a development to start back to Richmond Hill to help the city council restore order from its dysfunctional status. Throughout these efforts, most councillors know me very well. I believe most of you know who I am and my credibility. Therefore, if the council intend to use this as a report to achieve your goal, go ahead. Many concerned residents have suggested that I loudly resign to protest the retaliation. However, upon consideration, I realize this is precisely what the interest group intend. If I removed from a COA and then from now on, the COA, nobody knows what happens.
Okay, Mr. Lee, you're going to wrap up.
Okay. If the council opt to vote me out today, especially after so many significant facts have been brought to the public attention, their decision to ignore these issues and move me instead is likely to elicit a strong reaction from the residents. As a correspondence, some form of remedy to reform CA must be purchased. So if remove me can achieve those meaningful progress, then my sacrifice is worth.
Okay, Mr. Lee, you're over time now, so I'd like you to wrap up, please.
Along with the core mission of a Better Richmond Hill to advocate for COA reform, today's council vote is a test to let the public see where the council stands. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next delegate is Carla Warden, from 1393 Bethesda Side Road, regarding the feasibility of meeting provincial housing targets in Richmond Hill. So, Ms. Warden, welcome. You've got 5 minutes to address council.
Is this one working?
Yeah, no, well, both, the ones with the red lights on.
Thank you. I'm here to speak on a matter of a report regarding the feasibility of Richmond Hill, dealing with assignments of cutting housing permits assigned to it by the province of Ontario. However, I need to inform council that the nature of my presentation has been precluded by the clerk's department. Present in the chambers was Mayor West, Corporate Counsel Anthony DeMilta, CAO Darlene Jocelyn, and Commissioner Steele. I think the most important thing that I take away from this is that by tradition in this council, we have allowed individuals to pass their 5 minutes on to others.
Okay, Ms. Warden,
I know
you're
you're
speaking.
try and cut me off.
No, I'm not cutting you off. The clock has stopped. What I'm asking, no, just a second. Excuse me.
Okay.
Where I'm asking you to speak to the matter that's in front of us. I'm not, you've been explained what the reasoning for your concern was, and I think that was adequately explained. Right now, you're here to speak to the item on the agenda. So go ahead, please.
Yes, I will continue. There is a valuable voice in this community that needs to be heard regarding this report. This report has already come before a committee of the whole, where many councillors have spoken to the issue. I'm going to ask my councilwoman, Ms. Davidson, to provide a motion that defers this matter until that voice, unnamed, is heard and accommodated by the clerk's office. And I stand on a matter of democratic principle, which has been spoken so eloquently by Mr. Doherty about local government being the cradle of democracy. I will not address this issue until the appropriate voice joins this matter and you hear it. So, asking you fairly now, through you, Mayor West, do you believe that I have sufficiently addressed this matter and may I be excused? Or could you please accommodate that voice at the end of the delegation list today? Your choice, sir.
I'm not even sure what you're talking about, but you can be excused whenever you want. You've got 5 minutes to address council.
Correct.
That's what you're doing today.
Sir, I don't think the public appreciates being dismissed. I've asked for assistance here. I've spoken to the matter. I am allowed by tradition, as Ms. Silovitz knows, as Regional Councillor Chan knows, 5 minutes can be delegated to someone else and you can make joint presentations. This is not in your procedure. And your clerk has admitted there is no difference between procedure and practice. They're one and the same. So I stand here and say, this voice needs to be heard, sir, on this matter. And I have asked my councilwoman to specifically defer this report until that voice can be heard.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next person is Alex Rust from 11210 Leslie Street, about the same issue. Is Mr. Rust here? Okay. Oh, is Mr. Wong here? Okay, Mr. Wong, come on in. We missed you in the queue here, but you're welcome to come and speak. We're still dealing with delegations. So, sir, you can use either podium, whichever you prefer. You've got 5 minutes to address council.
Okay. I guess I'm Mr. Wong. I come here to speak on behalf of that report. I just arrived, so I think that we're still on that subject.
We are.
Correct? All right. Okay, what I want to say is that I look over the findings of the investigation between the Integrity Commissioner, Susan Craig, and the person who was being accused of acting in an inappropriate manner in the COA meeting. I think that the main thing that I see in the report is that Mr. Lee has been acting in making comments which are being known to be unwelcome to staff or other members in the COA. I think that that assessment personally is pretty accurate, and I support that argument. However, we have to ask whether the unwelcome comments are defamatory or is actually based on facts or not. And after seeing all these exchange between Mr. Lee and Ms. Craig, it seems obvious that Mr. Lee's comments are directed to the non-transparency of the COA and the dominance of the developers in COA decisions. I'm sure that most of the council members here, if not all of you, are aware of these problems. If I remember, some of the members here are actually campaigning in the last election of bringing transparency into the city council. The question here now is, if someone is voicing concerns that can be backed with facts and data, should that person be penalized simply because people find the comments unwelcome? Obviously, it's human nature that people find criticism being unwelcome. You just ask typical people like Putin, he won't welcome a criticism on his governance. Now, I believe that such actions of voicing dissent should be encouraged rather than penalized, despite the fact that the Integrity Commissioner was hand-tied because she was judging the matter on a matter which basically says that are these comments unwelcome by other people? The unwelcome manners that these judgments are based on should not be used to silence dissenting voices. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Wong. Okay, so that completes our list here of delegates. So we will go to the first item, which is 15.1 on our agenda. So Councillor Silovitz, you wanted to move that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want everybody who spoke here today regards to the matter before us to understand that I can't speak for the rest of council. I appreciate all of your words. And I understand where you are coming from. I understand that. But what is before us today is the IC report. It's not about the Committee of Adjustment. We as a council have to focus on what is on the agenda. What is on the agenda here before us is the Integrity Commissioner's report. Agenda item 15.1. This is about complaints that were legitimately made to our Integrity Commissioner by individuals. And this is also about the Integrity Commissioner's recommendations that are contained within this report. I believe the report speaks clearly for itself. To be honest, I've never read such a comprehensive report from an Integrity Commissioner, and I commend her for that. We as a council, the board, the members of the corporation of the City of Richmond Hill, the 9 of us, we are honor, if not duty bound, to ensure that everyone who works for this corporation works in a place of safety and respect. I believe it behooves us to do nothing less. We have many policies in place to which we shall and must conform, both through municipal bylaws and provincial legislation. Members of council in this term have pledged and signed documents which clearly state how we shall ensure all employees' health and well-being. And with all respect to the delegates who referred to the manner in which it is written in the IC report that the complainants felt they were harassed, that they were present in a toxic environment. When I read that, and when I read the part in the report about the complainants being reduced to tears, I completely understand that, because at another time it happened, it was projected, and it happened to me. So I perfectly understand that. Before I say anything further, I would like to ask through you, Mr. Mayor, a question of our commissioner who is with us online. May I do that, please? Thank you.
Welcome, Ms. Craig.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Commissioner Craig, thank you very much for attending this meeting. Not only is your comprehensive report comprehensive, but you are also attending this meeting, which in my recollection is the first time our Integrity Commissioner has done so. I would like to know, Madam Commissioner, through you, Mr. Mayor, if you could please help us understand the process you go through when investigating a complaint, which statutes you are bound to, which statutes you must professionally adhere to. And I would also like to know how long you have acted as an Integrity Commissioner for Ontario municipalities.
Ms. Craig?
Thank you. I just want to ensure that you can hear me. Just
Yes.
confirm.
Loud and clear.
Thank you so much. Your worship, through you to the councillor. I thank you for the question, and I believe that it is my responsibility to be available to respond to questions, to provide clarity on the report that is before you. I have been an integrity commissioner, a lobbyist registrar, a closed meeting investigator for 20 years. I started off working with David Mullen, who was the first integrity commissioner at the municipal level at the City of Toronto. Subsequent to that, I have moved on to be appointed to at least 30 municipalities in Ontario. The process for investigating a code complaint is set out in a code protocol. All municipalities are required to have an integrity commissioner, and all integrity commissioners are required under the Municipal Act, so an Ontario statute, to have a code of conduct. And the code of conduct sets out how the integrity commissioner will conduct an investigation, how she or he will receive a complaint, the provision of procedural fairness to the respondent to ensure that the individual member of council or local board who is subject of an investigation understands what process will be carried out, what information has been alleged against him or her, how the integrity commissioner will receive the information, investigate the complaint, speak to witnesses, and afford the respondent procedural fairness to see the draft findings that she will be providing to the deciding body upon completion of her investigation. You have a protocol at the City of Richmond Hill. You have a code for both council and for local boards. I have followed the rules of those documents. I have followed the rules of my internal guidance of integrity that has been gained throughout the years of being an integrity commissioner for several jurisdictions. I'd like to point out that the courts have oftentimes looked at whether or not an integrity commissioner has afforded procedural fairness to a respondent, meaning, does the individual who is subject of an investigation understand what this means? And does this individual, is this individual given the opportunity to give their voice to the investigation, to explain to the integrity commissioner their side of the facts of the information? In this report before you, this has been the case. Mr. Lee has been provided the allegations of the 2 complaints that came to me. He was provided an opportunity pursuant to your protocol to provide his response to the complaint. He was afforded extensions of time to provide that information to me. He was provided a draft copy of my findings prior to me finishing the final report. I have reviewed all the information of the complainants, of the witnesses, your policies of the jurisdiction, and Mr. Lee's supplementary response, so that I was able to understand both sides and all sides of this unfortunate issue. I believe that clearly set out provisions is what really gives the strength to an investigation, the fairness to an investigation, and the opportunity for you as a council to rest assured that the parties involved have been able to give all information available to the investigator, which is your integrity commissioner. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Ms. Craig.
Thank you, Commissioner Craig. I appreciate your response. And as a result of what I've said, what is before us, I would ask the clerk to bring to the screen, please, my motion, so that we have something on the floor to discuss. I agree with the Integrity Commissioner's recommendations. And I move the following. May you read it, please, Mr. Clerk? Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, it's moved by Councillor Silovitz that the investigation report from Suzanne Craig, Integrity Commissioner, dated March 4th, 2024, titled Formal Code of Conduct Complaint number 01191023, Investigation Report of Committee of Adjustment Member John Lee, be received B, that Committee of Adjustment member John Lee be and is hereby reprimanded pursuant to Section 22345 of the Municipal Act 2001 for violating the Code of Conduct for Local Boards as detailed in the Integrity Commissioner's report dated March 4th, 2024. And C, that as recommended by the Integrity Commissioner, John Lee's appointment to the Committee of Adjustment be rescinded pursuant to Section 1210 of the Code of Conduct for Local Boards effective March 27th, 2024.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that. So we have that motion. And I would just like to end by saying I want to thank Commissioner Craig for the work she's done on this particular file. I find it commendable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Davidson, you want to second this?
Yes, thank you. I do want to thank everyone who has spoken to this. Integrity Commissioner reports are very serious business, and we most definitely need citizen engagement. But the way I see it is that this isn't about community service, dedication, dissenting voices. It is only about the IC report and abusive behavior. And the report states, quote, I find that the actions of the respondent constitute workplace harassment. I want to ask through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask staff, can you explain what the city's obligation is in terms of protecting staff from harassment?
Commissioner?
Through the mayor to Councillor Davidson, the city has responsibility under the Occupational Health and Safety Act, as well as our own policies and procedures to ensure that we provide our employees with a safe, toxic-free workplace.
Thank you. I know if a family member of mine, one of my kids or my mother or my daughter or anyone's wife or any loved one came home from work and said, I was holding back tears. I feel so abused at work, that I would not say, well, did they have a good reason? No, I would say abuse is unacceptable every single time. A member of the community said, if Mr. Lee is removed, it will be a blow to confidence of residents in this council and this city. An IC report before us says that Mr. Lee's behavior constitutes harassment. What will be the public's perception if we say, okay, if you have a dissenting voice, you can be abusive, you can be aggressive if the means justify the end. And it's not for me or you or any of us to decide what is harassment. It's subjective. I'm a 5-foot woman. Scott's over 6 feet tall. I'm guessing we have different impressions of what is harassment. And that's why we have codes and rules for conduct. The Integrity Commissioner says those were violated by Mr. Lee. This council appointed Mr. Lee with the privilege of sitting on a committee to make decisions on behalf of residents. And I firmly believe you can dissent and have and in a respectful manner and work with your group. But this report says that didn't happen. Mr. Lee says that today is a test of counsel, and it really is. And my answer to the test is that I stand against abuse every single time. So I don't want to conflate any issues. This is about abusive behavior, and I support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Councillor Tree.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Before this motion's decision, I want to ask a few questions. So the trigger of this event actually, because Ms. John Lee facing to our clerk, our staff. The root cause here is because there are a few issues he's facing. He's looking for the information, he wants to get information back. Also, the second one, accessibility for all the historical data he's trying to collect. So from my understanding is the process here or the accessibility here has a little real problems. If John get what he need, for example, documents from previously, this way there is no conflict between himself and also our staff. In this case, this type of situation can be prevented. So my questions here, just for a pure technical perspective. Is there any good way to provide transparencies, for example, historic informations? I know city has certain rules. For example, when we look at our portals, we're looking for history reports. There are certain years of retention policies. So is any way from technical perspective, we can provide on-demanding links to the residents or whoever needed when they need to retrieve that 5 or 10 years documents, it's available. The reason behind it is we have Google, we have Amazon, we have Box, we have Bucket, whatever you name it. Technology are there. Is there any way that can be achievable? Maybe ask for IT support or anyone. Thank you.
Okay, yes.
Mr. Mayor, I don't see how that question relates in at all
Well-
to the integrity.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, I get what you're saying, but at the end of the day, the Integrity Commissioner report is not about that. I mean, if somebody is behaving in a certain way because they didn't get the information that they wanted, and it goes to workplace harassment, which is being suggested in this report, I'm not sure how you balance that.
Okay, I got it. Yeah, I think.
I'm not sure who you're asking that question to either.
Yeah, of the content. Sorry, I maybe ask the question separate time, of not just in a different environment, not just. I'll take back what I just asked. Thank you.
Mr. Clerk.
Thank you. And Mr. Mayor, I know you've ruled that the question is out of order, but I think it's probably very important that I comment generally on the city's information governance practices, because there's been some statements made throughout this meeting that might have left out. The city is obligated under the Municipal Act to maintain records, and it's obligated under the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act to disclose records in accordance with the process. The city is also obligated under the Accessibilities for Ontario Disabilities Act to ensure that records that are available on the website are accessible and meet those standards. And the city works very, very hard to balance those obligations. Because a comment was made about the availability of things on our website and stuff, I would comment that in achieving that balance, the city spent hundreds of thousands of dollars converting old documents to be accessible so that they were easily accessible by the public. Doing any more or going back farther, it's cost prohibitive, and the value makes no sense because those documents can still be accessed from the city through other processes. So I don't want to leave an impression with the public that we're not aware of or comply with our obligations to be accountable and transparent with documents. In fact, Council has approved an information governance policy that requires us to be accountable and transparent. I, under authority of the Municipal Freedom of Information Act and that policy, have approved a routine disclosure policy that we make sure that records are easily accessible to people through processes. We have many policies and practices to ensure that the city's information is readily available to the public.
Thank you. Okay, Regional Local Councillor DePaula.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think it's very important that we just focus on what the decision is being made by council. For me, I support the motion on the floor because there's, going through the Integrity Commissioner's report and relying on that expert advice and depending on counting on the process that we have and the extent of the investigation and the opportunity for both sides to have their say. It's all documented here, Mr. Mayor, quite well, that the professional conclusion can't be ignored, that we're talking about conduct that constitutes abusive, aggressive, inappropriate, and unprofessional behavior. And at the beginning of this term, that was a huge issue, and we all took a pledge that we were going to abide by our code of conduct, and we we experienced a lot of trouble in the previous term of council, and a lot of the abuses and the violations of the code of conduct was occurring behind the scenes. Mr. Mayor, when I had stepped in for a brief period, the trouble and the turmoil and the stress on our staff caused by a member of council who was unprofessional and inappropriate and aggressive outside of council is unbearable for a staff member, and it's so difficult when one of our employees are put in the position to listen to demands being made by a council member, or in this case, a committee of adjustment board member, and being persistently told that they have to do something that they believe is contrary to what they're supposed to do in law. No member of this organization should ever be put in that position. And when a staff member puts in writing an answer and it's not accepted by a member of this council or the Committee of Adjustment Board, and the member continues to be persistent and to use the position in a way that exerts undue influence on a person's staff, that causes an extreme problem. And we had an extreme situation in the last term, and I was the only one privy to all that was going on as the CEO and chair and acting mayor, and I can't overstate how difficult it was for our staff that were dealing with that. And the only recourse is through the integrity commissioner. There was nothing I could do but tell our staff that hopefully through the integrity commissioner process and through launch, all you're able to do is launch a complaint, and hopefully through that process, change will come about. Now, in terms of democratic principles, I have to address what's been said by the delegations today. Anyone in Richmond Hill can get there on that podium and make their case to council in any manner they see fit, as long as their behavior is appropriate and doesn't cross a line. But having passion or being loud or insistent when you're making presentations to council, that it's all fine. But we're talking about the conduct of a member now, and when you're a decision maker and you're supposed to be neutral in all cases. Mr. Lee, as a member, as a board member on the Committee of Adjustment, is supposed to be a neutral arbiter of the information in front of him, as we all are here. And when making presentation here today, it's clear that that it's still not understood the nature of the offense that's being alleged, and that the reprimand is coming forward because he today in his own delegation didn't refute the allegations against him and didn't offer a counter argument, but it seemed to try to insist that his facts were correct. And your facts being correct does not entitle you to have behavior that's unbecoming of a member. And that's the only argument I'm hearing from the other side. And I'm also hearing a
Regional Councillor, I'm sorry that you didn't get the bell, but you're actually 34 seconds.
Oh gosh,
over.
I didn't see that at all. I'm sorry.
If you just wrap up.
Waiting for the bell. Okay, so the only other argument that I saw from the other side was to try and dismiss this weight of allegations as making people uncomfortable, and that's not what's happened here. It goes far beyond that, in my view, Mr. Mayor, and that's why I'll support the motion on the floor. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm not sure what's going on with that.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Mayor. With your indulgence and council's indulgence, we've discovered that if I'm sharing the motion on the screen like this, the bell cannot be heard. So if council is okay, I'll take it off the screen right
Yes,
now,
please.
and I can bring it up when there's a vote if necessary.
Yes, please. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, through you, the mayor. I think most people know that, yes, I was a member of the Committee of Adjustment at one time. And then it also was not uncommon for me to be the lone dissenting vote on a number of those applications. However, this complaint today is not about the Committee of Adjustment. It is about a code of conduct. It's not, the idea that people are saying that John is being silenced, that's not what's being said here. There's the problem, as I see it, is that, and John used this in his own words when he was speaking earlier, is that he cannot accept the decisions. Well, there was a lot of decisions that I didn't like. I didn't want to accept. Often I was asking the very same questions that John would ask. I would ask them of staff. And yes, I might not like those answers. But I wouldn't continually go back to the same well with the same questions worded differently in a manner that would be harassing. I had the absolute opportunity to take a different path. And I've had these conversations with John that, a different path would have been better to go through the official, say the Ontario Associations for Committees of Adjustment. If you have certain concerns, this might be a place to start. Get those ones on board with you and go down that path. But to be in an open setting where our staff are working in an environment that puts our staff in a position to be subject to accusations, that definitely poisons the workplace environment. And it was mentioned earlier that as council members, we have a duty to provide a safe workplace for our staff. And if we make a decision today that is not in line with that, I can see where our staff would now have an opportunity to come after us as a council for not providing a safe workplace. For these reasons, I'm going to be supporting this motion. Again, this isn't about the decisions that John can't accept. I respect that he doesn't want to accept certain decisions. That's fine. But I cannot accept that our people should be subject to a poisoned work environment. I'm sorry. Those are my comments.
Okay, is there anybody else? Councillor Shu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, can I ask a question to Commissioner Craig?
Yes, absolutely.
Hi, Ms. Craig. I would like to ask you a question because you have two recommendations regarding your report. And the first one is reprimand. So can you clarify what's the definition of reprimand?
Through the worship to you, Councillor. There is regrettably no definition in the Municipal Act for a reprimand. Integrity commissioners seek guidance through the courts where there have been judicial reviews. best practice has set out that a reprimand is an outward demonstration and a chastisement to the member so that the public may have an understanding that wrongdoing took place. So the Code of Conduct is both a tool through which one investigates the actions of a member of council or local board member. It's also a document through which the enhanced trust of the public is retained. And so a reprimand is a way for council to outwardly demonstrate that they believe that the actions of the member who has been investigated constitutes wrongdoing under the code. It's a statement and an affirmation that wrongdoing took place.
Understood. Through the chair, I have another question. Regarding the Provincial Bill 68 amendment from several years ago, I remember it's 2017, which mandates all municipalities to establish codes of conduct for all members of council and also local boards. Does this amendment have any relevance to your investigation on this case?
Through your worship to Councillor Hsu. Thank you for the question. Any strengthening of integrity and transparency for a municipality harks back to that bill. The reason in the Hansen reports that the provincial government decided that all municipal governments shall have an integrity commissioner and a code of conduct was to enhance transparency and accountability regarding the conduct of those who are elected and those who are appointed. So the fact that in the penalty section of the code of conduct, which is provided in the Municipal Act, in the penalty section, there is both the opportunity for council to impart a reprimand or other penalties or a remedial action, harks back to, speaks to the intent and the spirit of the legislation, which requires municipal governments to hold one another accountable, to ensure that public trust is maintained through understanding that not only will the Integrity Commissioner investigate and make recommendations, but the decision maker council will publicly state their commitment to transparency through a reprimand.
Understood. I have one more question, technically to the clerk. As there are two recommendations on the IC's report, can we just discuss it separately for two recommendations or even a separate vote for that two recommendations? Technically, does it work?
Support. Thank you. Through the mayor, under the city's procedure bylaw, any motion can be split for voting purposes, provided that the split doesn't contradict it. So certainly, if it's council's wish, when the vote is called on this, the various clauses of the motions can be split for separate voting.
Yes. My standpoint is because there's two different recommendations. I think it's more fair to Mr. Lee if we have a separate vote and separate discussion on two recommendations. So that's my standpoint, and I would like to propose a motion to separate the discussion.
You don't need to propose a motion. It'll
It'll
just be done.
So I just want to separate vote on these two recommendations. That's more fair to Mr. Lee.
Okay.
That's all about my comment. Thank you.
Okay. Regional Local Councillor, Deputy Mayor Chan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for all the dedication.
Actually, sorry, Deputy Mayor, Ms. Craig, you had your hand up. Is that, there was a question there? Sorry, I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. Integrity Commissioner goes first.
Go ahead.
My apologies, Deputy Mayor. Through you, your worship, I just wanted to add to that last comment. The reprimand is an outward demonstration. It's an act of public confidence. It's a statement of council. The other recommendation that I have made is actually a penalty for the action of the member. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, Godwin. Go ahead.
Not at all. In fact, thank you for that clarification. I, for one, take the privilege of being designated by council as a deputy mayor and honored by the votes of the electorate in the city of Richmond Hill as the regional councillor. And I would think that Mr. Lee, with his history of being actively engaged, not only in the past term, but until now, is also a firm believer in doing our best how to make our community Richmond Hill to be even better. So on that note, I have no reservation or hesitation that Mr. Lee is or has been doing what he thought it would be the best way to approach to get what he was aiming at. And I appreciate in particular, Councilor Thompson just shared that his perspective, being a former member of the Committee of Adjustment. But let's be clear. Today, council are asked or tasked to look at specifically what are the issues that Integrity Commissioner, which go through in her report, that the process that she has determined on the 3 specific issues, the outline, I believe, in the first page, yes, first page of the report, that she is asked to look at and what council are asked to decide on based on her full process as well as the documentation in terms of rationale, outline the report and lead to the eventual recommendation to council. That's what we are dealing with here today. And it's not about that whether the person, Mr. John Lee, is a person of integrity or not. Like to me, it's different. We're focusing on the issues. We're not dealing with about the personal attributes or characters of Mr. John Lee. So I think that need to be set up up front. And based on that, the report from the Integrity Commissioner is no question, based on reported, that the respondent in this case, meaning to the complaints, which from 2 different sources, not only from one party, but 2 parties, that is alleged to, and it's been now concluded by the Integrity Commissioner, did, number 1, engage in workplace harassment. As response to previous question, our Commissioner of Finance Administration already stated, we as employer, I mean the corporation, the City of Richmond Hill, does have the legal obligation under Provincial Act to ensuring that the staff that within the corporation would have under both the legislation as well as the respect in the workplace policy. And as employer, the corporation has to certainly hold that up. That is no negotiation on that one. Respect is the word. And also the allegation, and it's concluded by the Integrity Commissioner, is not a one-time. It's perhaps not a misjudgment or not having a good day or night, but it's a pattern. So I want to bring out that word, a pattern. And so it's lesson learned there. And I know my time is limited, maybe opportunity to come back second round, Mr. Mayor. But I just want to make it very clearly that on all those 3 issues, there's no doubt in my mind, based on the Integrity Commissioner report and her investigation, focus on those 3 issues, that the respondent, Mr. Lee, has breached and found to have contravened the code of conduct for members of local boards. So I want to state that. And interesting, Councillor Michael Hsu just raised a question. I was about to say when it comes to voting, that we separate those A, B, C. Because actually in concluding that the IC and Integrity Commissioner also said, certainly up to council to determine what the form of reprimand would be. And I would maybe end at this point in time, come back to second round if there's opportunity. But just before I finish, I just want to say, I think there's an aspect that maybe I can come back to the second round in terms of the Committee of Adjustment. Does it need improvement in process and other things? But I will leave it under second round. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and also thank you for all those who came out today. Appreciate you taking the time to speak as a delegate. I would agree with the commissioner's first comment. This is an unfortunate issue. However, there are so many ways that ones can achieve their goals, however, we abide by the rules and the regulations and the protocol, and the most important thing is mutual respect. So I have to agree with the motion in front of us, and also I have to emphasize that many of my colleagues already mentioned, council has the duty to treat all complaints seriously, and to avoid being biased. That's why we have the integrity commissioner here, and this is a very detailed report, and I really appreciate all the information that has been provided to us, and certainly there's at some degree certain code have been violated. So, with all due respect, I think we need to respect our integrity commissioner's decision. That's why she is here. And unfortunately, we have to make a tough decision. So, and you know what? I commend Mr. Lee's, I'm not denying his contribution, his passion in the community. But unfortunately, we have to focus on this report. We have to focus on the complaints. This is a tough decision for us to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. So I'm the only one that hasn't spoken. So the city of Richmond Hill is many things to many people, but the corporation itself is a workplace like any other. It's completely unacceptable to have a finding of workplace harassment in this day and age and then not act on it. As mayor, I'm the CEO of this corporation, and it's important to me that we have a workplace that's free from harassment. As such, I don't really have a choice but to support the motion on the floor. But having said that, in addition, in this term of council, we have passed with this council several motions that express our firm commitment to upholding a safe and professional work environment, both on council and committees, and in our interactions with our staff. These motions reflect our values as a council. They are not just a nice thing to do. All of council signed a pledge on our very first day on the job this term, and that we were going to act responsibly and with compassion and not tolerate the kind of actions that are outlined in the report before us. Any member of the public that I have spoken to up to this point, I'm sure would agree wholeheartedly that we must act and we must expect actions from our staff and committee members that are free from harassment. The public prioritized this, I think, in some way in selecting this new council. It's important to know when workplace harassment happens that there are very real people who are being hurt and impacted by actions like those outlined in this report, and this is not acceptable. In thinking about this over the last few days, my mind goes to, and this was kind of said a couple of times by other members of council, what if the person being harassed is your wife, your son, your daughter, or your parent? Would there be any acceptable justification for this harassment? And I would have to say undoubtedly that the answer to that is no. The report before us is very detailed and is very clear. Harassment happened. A poisoned work environment was the result, and while numerous opportunities were given to change the described behavior, these opportunities were not effectively taken. So having an opinion that differs from the rest of the group is absolutely welcome, and having a healthy debate is incredibly important. This is how we build our community, but doing this in a respectful, professional, compassionate, and kind way is something that we stand by as a council. And I believe we've tried to model this behavior. I find having this report before us is very hard, it's very sad, and it's very disappointing that given the IC's conclusion, but it's clearly the right thing to do to protect our staff and other community members of the Committee of Adjustment. As mayor, I don't have the luxury of being a bystander here. I have the responsibility and obligations to do my part to ensure a safe workplace that is free from harassment. I believe this, and it's also enshrined in current workplace legislation. Several of the letters and the presentations today seem to allude to the actions described in the IC report were justified. I don't believe this is true. And I don't have the luxury to cherry pick when harassment is acceptable and when it's not. People get hurt in workplaces that allow harassment, and I'm not okay with this in this case or any other case for that matter. I was elected by the public for many reasons, I'm sure, but one of those reasons was to do what I could do to ensure that we have a functional, respectful workplace and in work environment. And I take this seriously in representing the citizens who elected me. There is no question that I will need to support the motion on the floor. I think, as I mentioned, it's not something that is a pleasant thing for any of us to have to deal with today, but I don't think there's really any other conclusion that I can draw. I just would like to mention too, I want to thank Ms. Craig for being a part of this meeting today. It was said before, I don't think we've had that happen. And we've had a few interactions with past integrity commissioners here and there over the last term of council. And I know that you've rearranged your schedule to be able to accommodate this meeting time. So I thank you. I also would like to say I thank the people in the public that came to speak today. And I certainly understand the concerns, but I think I've made my position on this fairly clear. So do we want to have a second round? Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to say that the reason I want to come back to the second round is there's a couple of issues that I haven't mentioned. One is, I, for one, hear loud and clear from the delegation today, including Mr. Lee, who's a member of the COA. I hear the word deep frustration, mistrust. I'm very mindful of that. Having said that, that's not an issue in front of us that we have been talking about. So I just want to bring that up. We are talking about an issue that council is dealing with, but what the delegation, for most part, I'm hearing is another issue that would need to deal with at another time. In fact, at the very end of the Integrity Commission report, and also want to say thank you, Integrity Commissioner Greg, she did suggest that recommend development of a procedure and rules policy for a committee of adjustment. So to me, I read it as a recognition, something need to improve upon. And I want to thank delegates, including Mr. Lee, who also have a paper here for the A Better Richmond Hill study, and some of the tables and yet to be confirmed in terms of where the source is coming from, validity, and I like the term someone mentioned, the best practices. That's something that the City of Richmond Hill Committee Adjustment can strive to. Having said that, that's not the issue today. The issue today is based on the IC determination investigation, as the respondent in this case offended or violated the code of conduct for local boards for those three issues. And it's affirmative yes, and I said in my first comment. And that brings to my second issue I want to touch on. It's about the breach of confidentiality. It's a serious matter. And I thank the entire commissioner actually citing the specific statutory provision about that issue. And I think that's a lesson to be learned, not just in this case, but in all things relating to the investigations or determination by the entire commission. I think that needs to be pointed out. Having said that, I honestly hope and think the respondent, although that he certainly, I appreciate his passion, not only at the display at this committee of adjustment based on what we're seeing, some of the previous correspondence he took on his own to send to all members of council, which again, it touches on the issue of confidentiality, but I'm not going to comment on that. It's not before us. I honestly hope and think that he has heard all 9 members comment and what the quote unquote judgment, so to speak, or decision rendered by the integrity commissioner. I think there's a lesson to be learned there. Reprimand does take a number of forms. I remember in our past term, just very immediate term of council, there has been quite a number of integrity commission report coming to council last term. And sometimes council decided not to accept the recommendations of the integrity commissioner. And in some cases, that would actually take other actions. So I'm just saying that I honestly hope respondents has heard and seen what would be the perhaps the professional appropriate way to deal with staff in the manner that is actually state very clearly, set out very clearly in the code of conduct. And I have to say that for the particular motion in front of us, I have no problem if voting for A and B. I do want to stay upfront. I have reservation about C, that on the premise that I hope the respondents learned the lesson, and he had the opportunity to be staying on the committee of adjustment. I honestly hope that he will conduct in a quite different manner in the way that has been described in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Regional Local Councillor DePaulo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this case has brought about a need for us to really take a look at what's happening at the Committee of Adjustment. I think there needs to be an evaluation of you know, how those meetings take place, and a lot of issues have been brought to light, and I don't dismiss that, and that's something we can deal with at another time. I just wanted to reiterate the specific case and the reasons for my vote and the support of the Integrity Commissioner's recommendations. It's not in any way to stifle dissent, because dissent is important and freedom of speech is important, and the ability to speak your mind without fear of reprisal, without fear of coercion, especially when you're outnumbered. I was 26 years old when I was first elected to this council, and I was often outvoted 8-1, and it was daunting. But I knew I had to stand my ground and do what I felt was right. And when you're 1 against 8, and you get stared down by other 8 members, 20 plus years older than you, and it takes courage. And I know that Mr. Lee has that courage. I know he's coming forward with for all the right reasons. I know his and I support his concerns about this town being overdeveloped. I mean, his passionate speech that he gave to us about what the province did in forcing the Richmond Hill Center upon us, I mean, that was cause for outrage. And his behavior is appropriate, and I just want everyone to understand that speaking out is great. Free speech is important. Dissent is important. Disagreeing is okay, and that should never be stifled. And I'd be the first one to jump up and if I felt that dissent is being stifled, that a majority is coercing a minority in any way. That's not what we're talking about here, Mr. Mayor. I think you said it very well. This is simply a case where it's not, it can't be tolerated that our staff or employees be mistreated, and that code of conduct that really details the proper conduct of a member of this council or that board has to be adhered to, and I think it's important that we uphold that. And as Regional Councillor Chan said, I think a reprimand is a lot. And when you're talking about I think perhaps it would have been sufficient, but I don't. I am going to support the third recommendation also because there's no indication that the behavior will change. There's no intention or nothing coming from the respondent that's telling me that that and he can insist that he's right in everything that he's fighting for, but that the way he conducts himself in fighting for his beliefs is going to change or be altered by a simple reprimand, and that's what it comes down to in making the decision. When it comes to a penalty, is the behavior going to change? And I'm not convinced that it will, and no one felt the need to provide any evidence that it will, or a pledge that it will, or try to assure council that that this behavior is a one-off, and that it would change, or it might change. In fact, the respondent's own delegation convinced me of the opposite.
Okay, thank you. We got a couple more speakers here. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much. Through you, the mayor. I do want to start out by saying that when it came to appointing members to this committee, I was one of the first ones to wholeheartedly support John's appointment to this committee. And a lot of that has to do with me being on the Committee of Adjustment, not being able to perhaps pursue some of the changes that I think might be appropriate for this committee. Did I foresee that, and I know that, yes, John is like a dog on a bone. There's no question about that. But did I foresee that it would end up where we are today? No, I did not foresee that. And I'm certainly not looking to try and stifle John at this point. But the whole behavior thing, the poison work environment scenario, those are things that I cannot accept. One of the things that occurred to me during this term of council was that one of the, I guess, some of the meetings that you're talking about were meetings which I would have had to recluse myself. These were a particular application that I had actually spoken in opposition to prior to becoming a counselor. And I had to reach out to our integrity commissioner to say, okay, I did do that. I spoke against this application, and now my family members want to go speak to this application. And I needed to get a ruling from and I appreciate that Suzanne Craig was able to provide that ruling that yes, I would have a conflict of interest in that particular case. However, my family members, they would not be bound by the same requirements that I'm bound by. So they had actually attended those meetings. And of course, they want to talk to me as much as my neighbors wanted to talk to me about this as well. But I had to recluse myself. But very difficult living in a house where you've got people that are trying to bend your ear. And one of the comments, and also the comment that was received by a neighbor today, was in regards to what was happening at the particular meeting. And basically the comments that I got in my own household and what I'm hearing here today is that perhaps an integrity commissioner report should have been brought against a different member of the committee, that saying that they perhaps may have not performed in a professional manner. So I guess my question would be, if somebody did want to bring forward an IC report or a complaint, who all is eligible to do that? Are members of the public eligible to do that? Who all would be eligible to do that? Perhaps staff could clarify that.
Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, and happy for the Integrity Commissioner, Ms. Craig, to weigh in, but I think she'll agree with me when I simply say that under both the Municipal Act as well as the city's own codes and procedures, any person who believes that a person who is subject to one of our two codes of conduct, believes that they have contravened a provision, is entitled pursuant to those to file a complaint to the Integrity Commissioner, provided that they do so within the timelines set out in the legislation and or the codes and procedures.
Thank you for that response, and could we get some clarification on timelines? And thank you.
To the mayor, I don't have it in front of me. I believe it's 6 weeks. I think it's 6 weeks from the first knowledge of the incident. That would be a matter for the Integrity Commissioner to judge upon receipt of a complaint. The only caveat I can tell you is also there's a different timeline if it happened to be an election period, but that would be what I would say.
Okay.
Thank you for those responses. I guess the only other thing that I have to say is that I know the Integrity Commissioner did not have to provide a comment about the Committee of Adjustment itself, that, you know, that she was looking at specific complaints here, but she did take the time to note at the end of the report that perhaps we as a council should be looking at policies and procedures around the Committee of Adjustment. So I thank her for that recommendation. I know it wasn't warranted, but I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a question. I hear that some members would like to have this separated in terms of voting. And I think in particular, number 3 or C, through you, Mr. Mayor, to our Commissioner Craig. What is your basis of recommending to council that under section 12.10 to remove Member Lee from the City of Richmond Hill Committee of Adjustment?
Commissioner?
Through the worship to you, Councillor. To be very clear, and I would like us to go back in time a little bit to the Bellamy inquiry. Years ago, Justice Bellamy, who made recommendations to the City of Toronto for an Integrity Commissioner, and was the basis for the Ontario legislature deciding that all municipalities shall have an Integrity Commissioner. An Integrity Commissioner is not just an investigator. An Integrity Commissioner is not just an individual who parses out recommendations of penalty. An Integrity Commissioner is a resource to your municipality, an individual who is supposed to have expertise in the area of integrity, ethics, accountability, and transparency, an individual who brings to light new best practices, as Deputy Mayor stated, to include in your codes of conduct and your policies, give advice to members of council, and look at the intersection of your policies with the code requirements and the Municipal Act requirements, such that the day-to-day transactions of the municipality and the overlapping of members of council and local boards comes to a point of integrity. And so when I investigate an individual, I look at the trust of the public. Have those provisions that you, council, have put in place for yourselves to be held accountable, have those been breached? And I have said that they have in the case of this member. And what is the penalty for that breach? The breach in this case is not a one-time breach. It is a pattern of conduct that was and ought to have been known to the individual to not just be unwelcome, but contrary to your code, contrary to OSHA, contrary to the Respectful Workplace, and contrary to the Municipal Act. So in looking at a conclusion and a recommendation to council, I did not just look at one instance on September 7th or September 8th. I did not just speak to the complainant. I did not just speak to some neighbors. I did not look at some meetings. I looked at instances where there were allegations of this behavior that commenced in January 2023 up until the time of the complaint, and determined that the member of this committee was given ample opportunity to A, understand the rules, B, understand that his desire to advocate for his community did not preclude him or did not remove him from the application of the rules, and notwithstanding his own colleagues, notwithstanding the staff saying to him, this performance issue is not one for you to determine. There is no performance issue. We will look at the minutes. This is how decisions are made. This member decided he would not adhere to the rules. So as your integrity commissioner, there needs to be an outward demonstration that your rules you intend to keep, reprimand. There has to be a penalty for a continuous running afoul of rules that not only breach the code, but poison the workplace, removal from the board. And there has to be an understanding that part of the reason that staff had to talk about their best practices over and over was because there is not a terms of reference. That does not mean that there are no rules of your committee of adjustment. It means that the rules have not been enshrined, and I'm making a recommendation that they should be, because your staff have said very clearly that based on the best practices of committees of adjustment throughout Ontario and the very best practices of your committee, there are rules, but they need to be enshrined. So there needs to be a statement, there needs to be a penalty, and there needs to be an application of best practices. And this is not one instance. It is a pattern of conduct that has continued since January 2023.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it gave me some insight on why you're coming to this recommendation. As much as I admire John's passion in serving the community, I think my struggle here is what kind of message council is sending out to the public after this meeting. What kind of message are we sending to our staff? So, reprimand is one thing, but reprimand has no teeth. And I agree with our commissioner. It's unfortunate. Nobody wins here, I have to say. But but the right thing to do is the right thing to do. So that's all my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other speakers. I'll just very briefly say that in this discussion today, I have made a conscious decision to allow, some latitude in what we're talking about today. But I have to say that at the end of the day, we can, as Councillor Hsu has asked, literally break up the motion. That's part of our procedure bylaw. But I think Commissioner Craig has said it way better than I would ever be able to say it as to why we need to stick to the recommendation. So Councillor Silovitz, you had asked to wrap. Oh, okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt through you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say there really are no winners in terms of this process and what a serious decision this is. But I do feel the residents of Richmond Hill are winners because they see this council saying no to abuse and sticking to it. And that is extremely important for the people of Richmond Hill who have witnessed different behavior over the years. So there are no winners, but we're going to take a stand that hopefully tells the residents you have confidence in us to do the right thing. Thank you.
Okay, wrap up, Councillor Silovitz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank all my council colleagues for their comments. I believe that we have looked at this report and we have debated it, and we can now come to a fulsome decision. Again, I want to thank the Commissioner for the work that she's done here. I know her job can't be easy either. So it's just a couple of things that I just would like to add in closing. A number of things were said here today by some of the delegates. And while we absolutely want to have you included and that we want to hear what your opinions are, one delegate stated that they felt that this report was a sham. This report is not a sham, not under any circumstances. Another comment was made that the complaints were petty. They're not petty, they're very serious. And in adjunct to that, it was stated that, that perhaps the complaints were made because the complainants had delicate sensibilities. No, that's not the case at all. Another delegate stated that we want to silence dissenting voices. No, we do not. In fact, today, what has happened here at Council, I believe, adequately shows and proves that we are not in any way silencing dissenting voices. As for the breach of confidence, if I may, through you, Mr. Mayor, just one question I would like to ask our confidentiality. I'd like to ask our clerk. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Clerk, it's my understanding when an IC complaint is signed and delivered, that there's a signing procedure that takes place with the clerk. And if I may, it's also my understanding that one of those pages that you sign with regards to the complaint is that there will be no breach of confidentiality, that the actual complaint is confidential. So through you, Mr. Mayor, I would just like to make sure that that is on the public record and the public is aware of that.
Thank you. Through the mayor to the councillor. So there's two levels of confidentiality in an integrity commissioner process, and Integrity Commissioner Craig can speak to her part of it. I can tell you that it's the city's code policies that in order not, and I will say that this is the reason for it, in order not to weaponize the code of conduct complaint process, does require confidentiality in the filing of a complaint. The background of that, which predates my time here, but I'm very well aware of it, is so that people can't just file a code complaint just to say that they filed a code complaint and put it on the public record that they've complained against so-and-so 100 times, whereas perhaps an integrity commissioner determines that there is no merit to those complaints. So that's part of our code procedures. And yes, there is a confidentiality agreement tied to our code procedures that is part of the submission.
Thank you. And it is signed by, it's signed by the parties. Is that correct?
Yeah, in fact, the primary person that has to sign it is the one that's actually submitting the complaint, so that they cannot turn around and say, I filed a complaint, just for the simple of saying that I filed a complaint.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioner Craig, do you want to add anything to that?
Thank you, through your worship, to you, Councillor. One of the things that and I'll be very brief, one of the things that I am tasked to do as your new integrity commissioner, maybe not so new right now, is to review your code of conduct, your protocols, and your policies. And I have done so, and I will be at a later date bringing those recommendations to you. Some municipalities, Richmond Hill is one of those, includes in the submission of a code complaint a requirement to not disclose information outside of the process to maintain the integrity of the process. The respondent, the member who is investigated, does not sign that document. It is the complainant. But as integrity commissioner, in my notice of complaint, so I write to the member and let them know, here is the complaint. These are the allegations. And I conclude in my notice of complaint that under section 223.5 of the Municipal Act, the Integrity Commissioner shall preserve secrecy. And I explain what that means. Anyone under my advisement or receiving information from me or to me, or providing information to me, shall not, except for their legal counsel, shall not disclose any information. And I reiterate that in all of my correspondence. In my final correspondence, when providing the preliminary findings of my report, I did again stress to the respondent that this is a confidential process, not in terms of secrecy. Secrecy is not the word I use. Secrecy is the word used in the Municipal Act. Confidentiality undergirds the integrity of this process, so people feel comfortable providing information, and I made that abundantly clear to all parties that this process will not be effective, cannot be effective without the confidentiality, meaning that we have to have a free flow of information, meaning that there has to be a cone of silence, not that people are not allowed to speak, but that we cannot use this to weaponize the process. And disclosing information that I provide to anyone or that is provided to me causes this entire process to be weaponized.
Thank you, Madam Commissioner. In closing, I just want to say I agree with the separation of the items on the motion before us. If we can have that back on the screen, I would appreciate it. And lastly, I would like to say that many of my council colleagues here have made very similar statements. Basically, that this is not easy. This is not pleasant. This is unfortunate. Nobody wins here. It pains us all. And this is not a joyous occasion, not under any circumstances. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
I ask for a recorded vote, excuse me.
Councillor Tree put up his hand after I said wrap up. So Councillor Tree, you'll be the last speaker, I think.
Okay, thank you so much. So first question to our clerk. So for the basic conduct or council conducts, is that policy apply for all the council members, also for the appointed members as well, including COA? And also they are public accessible?
Thank you. Through the mayor, if I understand the question, I apologize if I didn't get it. The city has two codes of conduct. It has a code of conduct which applies to members of council, and it has a code of conduct for local boards, which applies to the people that council appoints to local boards as defined in the Municipal Act. So yes, it would apply to citizen members of committees. It would apply to the citizen members of the Committee of Adjustment, any of the committees except possibly the Public Library Board. They might have to do their own. But so yes, this is a requirement of the Municipal Act that council has addressed by adopting these codes.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we already heard the stories and also Councillor Scott Thomas's comments. If in the future there's a committee members, appointed committee members who maybe you think or residents think there might be violate the policy of code of conduct, please review the policies and then file your complaints to our IC. This is one of my comments here. The second one is all the motivation here today, the debating is for the quality of services. Maybe after this motion, we decided was the action we are taking. I want to promote another motion as well to enhance the services for our COA separately. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we have a recorded vote called, and we've come to the end of our conversation about this. So recorded vote called by Councillor Silovitz. Over to you, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you. Through the mayor, and as earlier requested, we will split this vote into clauses A, B, and C. So voting on clause A of the motion as it appears on your screen to receive the Integrity Commissioner's report, Councillor Silovitz.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor West.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Liu.
Yes.
Thank you. Regional Local Councillor DePaula.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Davidson.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Xu.
Yes.
Thank you. Regional Local Councillor Chan. Thank you. Councillor Tree.
Yes.
Thank you. Clause A of the motion carries unanimously. Voting on clause B of the motion to reprimand the Committee of Adjustment member, Councillor Silovitz.
Yes.
Thank you. Regional Local Councillor DePaula.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Liu.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Davidson.
Yes.
Thank you. Regional Local Councillor Chan.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Xu.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Tree.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor West.
Yes.
Thank you. Clause B of the motion carries unanimously. Voting on Clause C of the motion to rescind the Committee of Adjustment appointment, Counselor Silovitz.
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Davidson.
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Thompson.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor West.
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Tree.
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Liu.
Yes.
Thank you. Regional Local Counselor DePaula.
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Shu.
Yes.
Thank you. Regional Local Counselor Chan. Thank you. That carries unanimously and the entire motion is carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, members of the public that came out today. At this point in time, I think we need to call a recess for lunch. So we'll be back. Is it like 1 o'clock? Okay, 1 o'clock, we'll be back.